Hi, welcome to Bible Talks with Belinda. If you viewed my previous video, it was on Genesis 1:1. That is the beginning of the playlist that I am currently developing. If you have not watched that video, please do so. It will give you context for the rest of the videos that I intend to make. Just to recap, I discussed Genesis 1:1. We defined what God meant in Hebrew, which means Elohim. Went over the difference between creationism and the reason for the purpose of knowing, reading, and studying Genesis as a foundation to your Christian belief. So today, my goal is to get through Genesis 1, 2, and maybe some other verses for this segment. As I previously mentioned, my goal is to keep these videos 30 minutes or less, and that is to just provide you with some tools, some study tools, and then let you go and do your own research and your own study and your own prayer to get a deeper understanding of Revelation, of Genesis. As I previously mentioned, I will be reading from the King James Version, and I also highly recommend that you have a strong concordance to follow along doing these studies. It's one thing to sit and watch, YouTube videos, have someone discussing things, telling you about stuff, and then it's another to actually get your own study tools. The Bible tells us to study to show ourselves approved so that you can be a defender of the faith and of what you believe, and also to just know what you actually believe. All right, so Genesis 1, 2. Uh, Genesis 1, 1, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. As we stated, in the Hebrew, God means, it's plural. It means Elohim, which means God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. We discussed how John 1:1 states that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And in verse 2, we have uh, in the heaven. Okay, in verse 2, we have, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So here we are shown the Spirit of God, which is part of the Trinity of God. So, like I said, in the beginning was God. We know God, Godhead. Uh, we know that the Word was with God, and now we see the Spirit of God moving upon the face of the earth. So it's important to understand the dissect Genesis 1, 2. It says the earth was without form, void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So when you're looking at that, you think, how could God create heaven and the earth? And now verse 2 states that it was void, without form, and darkness upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So when you're looking at this, you have to understand that the earth here is a sphere, and we'll go into detail to displace the flat earthers with scripture. But here you have the earth is a sphere, and it's like a water world, So it's nothing but water. Have you ever seen a movie where the earth, I can't remember the name of the movie, but the entire earth was just water and people lived on top of the water. And that's what the world looked like. It wasn't like it is now where you have land mass. So another question you have to, so just have that idea, that vision in your head. It says it was without form. So here, this is where your concordance comes in, because you want to understand the meaning of the word, the Hebrew meaning of form. So we go to form. Okay, in the Hebrew meaning of form in Genesis 1:2 means, excuse me, to lie waste, a desolation, a desert, a worthless thing, vain, confusion, empty place, nothingness, waste, wilderness. And it was void. All right, here we have void, means empty and undistinguishable ruin, emptiness. All right. So here you have, in the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. And then verse 2, and the earth was without form, void, darkness, and was upon the face of the deep. Now you do, for whatever it's worth, you do have some theologians who believe that here is where the gap theory comes into play. I can't for certain say that this is true or this is false, but uh, it does raise questions if there was a gap between when God created the heaven and the earth and verse 2, and now you have a earth that is void, without form and darkness. Does God really create anything like that? Because as you continue to read Genesis 1, everything after that God creates, and when he finishes, when he does create the beasts, the fields, the trees, and man, every time, light and darkness, it says that God said it was good. But here in verse 2, you don't see the statement saying that God saw that it was good. You don't see that. So this is the reason for these studies, is to help you to um, uh, do some critical thinking. There's a possibility that this is where Satan failed. This is the time that Satan fell to the earth. He was cast out of heaven, and he could have, fell to the earth here, and that's why you see darkness and voidness and wasteland. This is something that goes with the characteristics of Satan. Also, you see here where it doesn't say where God created the darkness. You just see where darkness is here. It said God created the heaven and the earth, and then here you see where there's darkness, but it doesn't say that God created the darkness. So there's just some things to kind of help you to think. We can't say that that is for fact, and I will not put that forward as truth. But as you continue to read Genesis, you see that God tells Adam and Eve to replenish the earth. Well, you don't replenish something that has not been um, uh, replenishing is to replenish something that was once there before and it's no longer there. So in order to not get too far ahead, I just want to put that out there. All right. Uh, it says, "And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." So here we're going to go back to the concordance, and we're going to look up the Hebrew meaning of spirit. In verse 2, the word spirit is capitalized, so it does have great significance. So when you always reading, you would see Lord in some instances is lowercase, and in some cases is uppercase, and that is great significance. But we'll go into more detail on that later. All right. In Genesis 1:2, the meaning of spirit is the Hebrew word is rokosh or something like that. I can't really pronounce a lot of these Hebrew words, but it means to blow, to breathe upon. Um, so the Spirit of God was breathing upon the face of the waters. Now I have read before where it's some people have said, theologians have said that there was possibility that the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water and the waters were resisting that. All right. So that's a possibility. I'm not putting it forth as truth. So I just want to recap. The earth was without form, meaning that it was a wasteland, it was void, it was just complete, utter destruction. We learned that because that is the Hebrew meaning of form, and void, meaning there was nothing. It was nothingness, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. Verse 3, "And God said, Let there be light, and there was light." Here you see the word. The word, God is speaking the word, and the word is creating. So in verse 3, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. But you don't see in verse 2 where God said, "Let there be darkness," and there was darkness. All right. Verse 4, "And God saw that the light, it was good." But you don't see where God said that the darkness was good, but it was there in verse 2, right? In Hebrew, the meaning of good, because you will see that term over and over. God said it was good or that it was good. So we want to understand the context of what good means here. All right. So good in this context means that it implies his creation was suitable for its intended purpose. All right. So once again, it said, "And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness." Now, have you ever read Genesis and realized that there was light and darkness before day and night? So you have to realize that light and darkness is both spiritual and non-spiritual here in this context. Is what I believe. There was light and there was darkness. So, and you see the the battle of light and darkness throughout the context. I mean, throughout reading the Bible. So here God is making a separation between the two. All right. It says, "And God called the light day, and he called the the darkness night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. So if you go back to what I was saying in Genesis 2, okay, so yeah, so there was light and darkness, and then he named them, and he the name the light day and the darkness night. And then throughout the Bible, you see the reference between light and darkness, night and day. All right. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So, like I was about to say, if you go back to Genesis 1 2, like I said, they feel that that's a gap theory where there were, you know, thousands, maybe millions of years between verse 1 and verse 2. But here you have, um, after God separated the light from the day, it says, and the evening and the morning were the first day. So, was Genesis 1 through 5 the first day? Or was it when after God moved on the face of the deep of the waters and separated the night from the day? Is that when the first day began? So that's just some things that to kind of, you know, meditate upon, to pray about. But there are some questions that may not even be answered until we actually get to heaven. But you do have clues to kind of think, okay, well, that's a possibility. And as you read on through the text, one of my questions has always been, why was Satan, if God created the heaven and the earth and all these herbs and everything and the trees and the cattle, and you created man, you never see where God created Satan. You how was the serpent in the garden with Eve and able to deceive Eve, as we know, that the serpent was in the form of Satan. I've always asked, well, how was he there? How did he get there? How did he even get into the garden? Uh, so that's the type of things that will start to kind of get your wheels spinning, to dig in, to meditate deeper, and to kind of um, seek the Lord more for revelation. All right. Verse 6 says, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Okay, firmament means an expanse or visible arch of the sky. So here you have a firmament, an arch in the sky. I don't know if this is something visible to man, how expansive it said it's an expanse. We don't know how expansive it is. Is it something that extends just above the Earth atmosphere, or if it's something that expands millions of miles above the atmosphere? This is kind of something that I really don't know. So I would encourage you to do more research on that. All right. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which was above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So that's what I said. Like, firmament is, we don't know how expansive the firmament goes. Also, in Genesis 1, heaven, if you look up the Hebrew meaning of heaven, here it says, it has a dual meaning alluding to the visible arch in which the clouds move, as well as to higher ether. So heaven here is plural. You have, it could be heaven in which the earth atmosphere, that's the heaven, and then you have a second heaven, which is in the cosmos, the arena, and then you have heaven in which God resides. So we don't know, like I said, we don't know how expansive that firmament is. All right. Verse 9 says, and God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let dry land appear. And it was so. So, as I stated before in verse 2, the earth was pretty much, whatever happened here on earth, it was pretty much a water world. But there was land underneath. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth. And the gathering together of the water called the seas. And God saw that it was good. Here you go again. God saw that it was good. It was for it's being shifted and formed into what its intended purpose was. And God said in verse 11, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb seed, yielding seed, and fruit tree, yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. Let's see how I'm doing on time. All right. So everything came here in verse 11. It came from the earth. All right. So out of the land, everything came out of the ground. All right. So here you see where everything seems to be in a mature growth state. It doesn't say that God created seeds and over a period of time the seeds grew. These seem to be full-blown herbs and fruit trees and grass, and then that will produce after its own kind. And some people get hung up on this because you have to understand here, kind is there are different variations in a kind. So this comes into play. You have debates about what happened at the Ark. I may be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but a kind has various species, various species in a kind. So from a, let's say, a canine dog or a dog of a kind, you can have different variations of that kind, and that produces different 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 all right. So what I was saying is the Hebrew meaning of kind, to portion out, sort out, species. So you have different species, different variations in a kind. So when Noah took the animals upon the ark, you have two of each kind, and so those two they come together and they create different variations, and each kind has a genetic code where they can produce different kinds, and as those different species variations um, mate, different species come out. So you have the argument of evolution, but here you see how different variations of a kind can be produced, uh, dismantling the theory of evolution, where animals and everything just evolved over time due to you know whatever the evolutionists say. They just evolve over time, and you end up with this type of species going extinct. But as they reproduce, that's how the different variations of species are formed. All right. So coming up on 26 minutes here, I just want to go ahead and wrap this up. Today we went over Genesis 2 and we stopped at Genesis 12. And so I would highly encourage you to read those verses again, do some more studying, do some more research, meditate on those on those uh on those verses, and leave what you think about this study and what your thoughts of in the chat. All right, thanks. Have a good day.